Hello everyone, it's been a while. Today I'm going to go through a pen which I'm sure a lot of people have seen similar ones of at the counter of a fountain pen shop and wondered, pretty much like, what's the point, right? And that's actually the Hira Maki-e pen by Pilot. I'll put the exact model name and on the description of the video, but basically just to give you like a quick overview of what Hira Maki-e is, there's many ways in which you can actually do drawings on fountain pens, at least the traditional Japanese way. And the way that Hira Maki-e works is basically they would put a layer of urushi lacquer on the pen, and then they would actually wait for it to dry off, and then apply another layer of lacquer, or rather draw using lacquer on the pen. These images, in this case it's of a crane or two cranes, and basically once they apply that drawing using lacquer, they then sprinkle either gold dust in this case, right down here, or they some other form of paint or dust to kind of create all these various colors of the red part of this crane, this white crane, and the white feathers and so on. So as you probably could kind of gather, it's a pretty laborious process. Whether or not you like to have a pen with drawings on it is another matter. I'm going to be comparing and contrasting this pen slightly with probably the closest Pilot pen that will kind of it will match up to, and that's actually the custom 742. However, you'll probably see later on that it doesn't really, it's a pen by itself, right? The reason being the dimensions of this pen is a little bit different from 742, even though it, and I'm going to try to kind of show you here, even though it's a shorter pen, I've lined up the top, even though it's a shorter pen when closed, when the pens are open, the Maki-e pen is actually longer, right? So now I've aligned this part. In terms of exact dimensions, when uncapped, this pen is about 129 millimeters. 742 is about 127, roughly, very roughly. The other difference dimension-wise, which is noteworthy, is the fact that this pen, because it's made of different materials as a 742, it's made of brass in the body and as well as the cap. This section of this Hira Maki-e pen is basically slimmer at about 10.3, 10.4 millimeters compared to 10.8, 10.9 for the 742. So slightly slimmer in the hand, but very slightly longer. But just let's put the 742 aside and just talk about this Pilot number 10 nib Hira Maki-e pen. So like I mentioned earlier on, the materials used, and you can definitely feel it, right? You can feel the brass in the cap. There's a little bit of heft to it. This heft gives it a little bit more of an expensive feel. The other thing to note is the fact that the clip is actually kind of embedded in a slot in the cap. So it's unlike a typical Pilot custom pen where you can actually unscrew the cap on top and dismantle it. I'm not sure whether or not you can actually do this at all with this pen. The other thing noteworthy about this, the clip is the same, by the way, for the 742 to the 742. The other thing noteworthy is the inside of this pen you might not be able to make it out, has a bit of a felt lining. That's to in case people who like to post the pen, that little felt lining would protect the urushi lacquer as well as all the paint work down here. I don't post very often, so I'm pretty safe, but if you tend to like to post your pens, just take note of that. I don't think the felt would protect the finish 100%. Over time, when the felt kind of wears off, you might end up scratching the urushi, which is not a good thing. The body of the Hira Maki-e pen is, again, there's a little bit of heft to it, not too much. It's not like weighing like a ton of bricks, but you definitely can feel it. And the pen comes with a converter. It's these black converters. I believe it's a Con 70N compared to the usual silver Con 70 that you get with the other custom pens. And as you notice, this part of the section down here it's resin. At least I think it's resin. I'm pretty sure it's not ebonite. So it's resin here compared to the custom pens, which here, this area of the pen is typically made of metal of some sort. So it's interesting the choices that the designers at Pilot kind of made when designing this pen. Of course, the real star of the show is the painting. And sometimes when you get these pens, especially pens that have had a lot of use, right, you probably might, by the way, you can actually feel the application of that gold dust. It's kind of slightly raised in terms of the images down here. But what I was saying is that when you buy one of these pens, and I believe when they come out of the factory, they should be perfect, but after heavy use, you might get some scratching of the paintings off the surface of the pen. I've seen it in other pens before. Just be aware if you're buying a used pen. This particular one, however, I've kind of gone over it pretty well, and I believe it's pretty much perfect in terms of the application of the pen, of the drawings. There are other drawings. This one, like I mentioned, is of the crane, and I kind of like the crane. I might be wrong, but I think these are the white cranes of Kamchatka, where they dance around on the lakes in winter. And you can try Googling it. In terms of the nib, not much different. In fact, there's no difference to the number 10 Pilot custom nibs. It's 14 karat. It's number 10, and in this case, it's the fine. The feet are the same. It's the usual Pilot plastic feet. I believe mine is very slightly misaligned, but I think it should be fine. So I'm going to, and by the way, I'm not sure you'll be able to make it out. Whenever you buy these pens, especially this pen is used, it's a 10-year-old pen, by the way. And if you have very good eyesight, you might be able to make out the date code for this particular pen. It was made in 11 or November of 2013. So it's a 10-year-old pen. It doesn't look like a 10-year-old pen because it probably wasn't used. It probably was lying in the aforementioned glass shelves of the fountain pen shop, and nobody bought it until recently. So it's, sometimes don't be afraid to buy old pens, because we often come across pens like these which are not used at all. I'll show you a writing sample as I always do. Today I'm going to be using this very, very old and beat up Castelli. Castelli, I think it's a notebook or paper manufacturer based in Italy. I've had this book for a long time, and I'm just going to do a kind of a dip I don't really use this pen very much, in case you were wondering, right? In terms of everyday use, I don't think having one of these Rushi, I'm not sure what the official term for it is, the Nippon Art pilot pens. They are probably meant for, looking at more than anything else. Is my take on it. It's not quite at the level of the Namiki pens. I believe, if you're very, very rich, you might buy a Namiki pen and then use it every day. Namiki does make Hira Maki-e and other forms of Maki-e pens, obviously, because Namiki it's the same company essentially as Pilot. But those pens, the price of those pens, and I personally won't be one of those people who gets one of those pens and uses it every day, right? Which I'll talk about a little bit in the summary. So and I believe it's the crane. Not sure what the exact designation of this is. So I can tell immediately, when I bought this pen, I tested it out, obviously. I could tell immediately that this pen was not used very much. For a Pilot fine, over time, you would tend to see a thicker line with no pressure added. But I could tell immediately that, this pen probably was purchased from the shop and then kind of like, given as a gift or something like that, and the person actually just didn't really use it, right? So it's fairly common, right, to come across pens like these. It's a quiet taste, like I mentioned earlier on. These pens are typically given as gifts, right, where speaking about all of that, the cost of this pen officially, and I'll put a screenshot of the page of the exact model designation on Pilot's website for this pen. It's about 50 or 55,000 yen, which translates to about 500 plus Singapore dollars. It's not a cheap pen, and probably it fits into the sweet spot of someone who would be buying something a little bit special rather than like a Pilot Custom, which is made out of plastic. In terms of, and they want to give this to someone maybe to mark a special occasion, maybe an anniversary or something of the sort. However, in terms of actual feel in the hand, the Urushi pen obviously has that little bit more expensive feel with the brass and with the coating. It's very smooth in the hand and so on. It writes perfectly well. So I think for all those reasons which I gave, you might consider this type of pen if you're into it. Otherwise, typical resin Pilot pen, you can bang it, you can use it every day and not give a second thought about it, right? And performance-wise, it will be fine. So I guess this pretty much concludes what I wanted to talk about for this Pilot Hira Maki-e pen. I'm not sure whether or not you would consider buying a pen like this. Just in case you were wondering, I didn't buy this pen brand new. Brand new would come with a nice box, wooden box probably. possibly with a bottle of fountain pen ink from Pilot and so on. I bought this used, and I bought it at a fairly good price, and therefore that's why I got it. I wouldn't necessarily buy it new myself, but yeah, I might if if there was a special reason for it, like I mentioned earlier on. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like I mentioned, it's been a while. Let me know if you have any thoughts, any comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.